Hello and welcome back once again to After the Credits. Today we're talking about, well, you can't really see the poster, but way up there somewhere is The Nut Job 2, Nutty by Nature. So what did I think of The Nut Job 2? It was the logical successor to The Nut Job, but again, a movie that we didn't really need other than to cash in and make a sequel to something. So we start out, I think it was about a year later or so, where all the animals from the park are now living in the abandoned nut shop, and basically saying how they have this lifetime supply of nuts that they never had to forage or gather or anything like that, and they can just live in this nut shop throughout the winter and blah blah blah. And honestly, for what was in that shop, for them eating the way they were eating and just kind of hoarding and everything, that would not have lasted them a lifetime. They might have had a couple more years before they would have ran into the same problem they ran into anyway, which were the nuts went away. So they're basically living in the nut shop, and the one female lead from the first movie is like, even though we have the nut shop there, it should only be for emergencies. What if something happens and now the nut shop's gone? And the younger generation isn't learning how to forage and how to survive, and they'll starve to death if the nuts suddenly go away and they don't know how to do anything. And of course the main squirrel, he's like, whatever, the nut shop's never going to go away. What, you think it's going to suddenly explode or something? And boom, it explodes. And apparently like one of the gas valves that got turned on at some point and they didn't turn it off. So when the furnace kicked in, boom, everything exploded. Why they couldn't dig down through the rubble of this place? Because it basically, the building's on fire, the fire department shows up, but before they really do anything, the building kind of collapses in on itself, and it puts the fire out, so they just kind of make sure it's out and leave. And it's like, okay, so the top of the building collapsed, but all that stuff was down in the cellar, so why can't you dig down in the cellar and still get access to the nuts that are down there? You won't be able to live in there like you were, but you could probably clear a path to where you could get to some of the nuts and still like harvest those if needed. But they're like, oh no, all the nuts are gone. Okay, don't see how, but whatever. So now they're like, oh no, we're gonna starve, and they're like, no, we just have to go back to foraging like we used to. So they start trying to do that. And turns out the mayor of the town looks over at the park and he says, everything in this city makes money for the mayoral office except for the park. It just kind of sits there and we have to pay to keep it up and blah, blah, blah. He goes, what if we turn it into a theme park so people can come there and still enjoy the park, but they have to pay? So, the park is kind of paying for itself in the long run. So he starts to set into motion turning the park into a theme park, and at first everyone's kind of okay with it. And the animals are like, we can't let this happen, they're going to destroy our home, we're not going to be able to find food, and blah, blah, blah. So they set out to fight against the mayor and destroy all the equipment, keep sabotaging the building of this theme park and whatever. And it kind of occurs to you in the start of the film that, why don't you just let the theme park happen? You still have all your tunnels underground that you can still live in. There's still going to be a few trees left in the park. They're not all going to go away. You can live inside of some of the rides. I'm sure there's ways to do that. And the fact that it's basically a fairgrounds, there's always going to be food. You're not going to have to forage for things. There's going to be popcorn, whatever people throw away. Carnival foods are going to be all over that place, and these animals would not starve. But they want to fight against it. And at one point they feel defeated, so they're like, well, there's another park across town, let's just move there. So they move over there, and they realize that's a golf course, and they're not going to be able to live there either, because there's too many humans around, which doesn't really make sense. If you're trying to forage for food for the winter, why people would still be out golfing in the winter doesn't really make sense, but okay. So they can't live there, so they're back to trying to destroy the amusement park. And because the animals keep trying to sabotage everything, and it starts falling further and further behind and going over budget, the mayor basically starts to cut corners on things, and basically builds a shoddy amusement park that's going to fall apart within like a month of it being there anyway. So it eventually opens and the animals failed at their attempt, but everything's kind of half-assed. So they have the opening night in the park where only the investors are allowed to come and the general public has to wait until it actually opens to the public. And again, the animals are going around trying to destroy the park still because now everything is so shoddily built that it's easy to destroy. And it's like, again, there is food everywhere for you guys right now. Why would you sabotage your own food supply? Why not just let the park be built the way it was supposed to and you would have had a food supply? But basically they end up destroying the park, and right around the time everything's going on, the city safety inspector shows up and he's like, this place is a death trap. Whoever is responsible for this is going to be going to jail for a long time. And the mayor tries to run away but gets captured anyway. And then the whole park just collapses. Well, then it turns out that over the course of some time, the entire community came together, got rid of all the old broken amusement park rides, and basically rebuilt the park back to what it was. So now all the animals had a place to live again and went back to foraging and collecting nuts for the year and saving them so that they wouldn't die. And it's like, okay, but it was probably close to a year or two that the park was being rebuilt. So what did you survive off of for that year? Where did you live for that year? You know, none of that is ever really explained. And it's basically like, it's an okay concept overall for how to follow up a movie like The Nut Job, but there's so many plot holes and loose ends in it that it doesn't really make a lot of sense. I know it's supposed to be for kids, it's a kids movie, they're here to watch stupid animals doing stupid things and laugh at it, but at least make your story comprehensible. I mean, if I can see a major plot point in the movie about why not just let the theme park be built and you're going to have all the food you want, how are you supposed to expect a kid to look at it and be like, oh yeah, they shouldn't be building that theme park there? Overall, it seems like they're trying to shoehorn in an environmental message, but they don't deliver it properly, and it's just, I don't know, it kind of doesn't really fit. So what would I give it as far as a star rating? Again, I'm probably going to have to go in the range of a 2. I was going to say a 2.5 just because it's an okay movie. It's meant for kids, so I can't really put too much thought into it. But the fact that there's so many open plot holes that you can just fall into, and it's like, why wouldn't they just do this? Or why wouldn't they do that? If these animals are really this intelligent, why wouldn't they do this? It's just too glaring of a thing to really give it above a 2. But at the same time, it's probably one of the better films out of the last 4 or 5 that I've watched. So I almost want to give it a 2.5, but at the same time, there's just too many plot holes for me to do that. So yeah, this one gets a 2 as well. So that's about all I had to say about this one. Again, as always, thank you guys for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share the video. The links are down in the description. Click the bell wherever it is and get notifications every time I post new content. And until next time, I'll see you after the credits.